Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Scouting 5, recapping scouting news from around the world for the week of April 21st, 2025. I'm Scouter Ken, and I'm once again recording from St. Albert, Alberta. And a happy Easter to you all out there, belatedly. Happy Easter at any rate. I kind of dropped off the radar there for much of the Lenten season. Not intentionally, but I guess it isn't a bad thing to give things up during Lent, and now I'm back, and hopefully going to try and keep these updates a little more frequent than I've managed so far this year. Catching up on news from mid-March onward, Scouts in Africa and Europe, through an initiative called Planète, are leading change in peace, gender, and sustainability, quoting scout.org. The Planète project, acting for peace, freedom, learning, nature, equity, tolerance, and environment, that's evidently what the acronym stands for, is empowering over 7,000 scouts and guides across 5 countries and 2 continents to drive meaningful change in key areas like gender equality, education for peace, and climate change education. Led by the Scouts and Guides of France in partnership with the Scouts of Lebanon, the Association of Guides of Lebanon, the Rwanda Scouts Association, Rwanda Girl Guides Association, the Tunisian Scouts, and the Association of Catholic Scouts of Côte d'Ivoire, this initiative is aiming to reach more than 11,000 scouts and guides from 14 to 25 years old. Together, they are leveraging the educational methods of scouting and guiding to promote peace, environmental sustainability, and gender equality. Through workshops, camps, training sessions, advocacy campaigns, and other activities, participants are becoming powerful ambassadors for positive change within their communities. These scouts and guides are engaging in citizen mobilization, partnering with local authorities to advance sustainable, equitable, and fair societies. Funded by l'Agence Française de Développement, the French development agency, the project provides young people with the tools and skills necessary to create a brighter future. A key milestone of the Planète project occurred in August 2024 when scouts and guides from across the globe gathered in Rwanda for an international camp. Held from 25th to 31st August, the event focused on the pivotal role scouting plays in fostering peace and tolerance. End quote. So that's kind of a neat project. The camp that is mentioned happened around a year ago. Well, not quite a year ago, but close to a year ago now. But it is interesting now that it's kind of percolating up in the news. Have to watch for other initiatives that Planète gets up to over the years. It was also, towards the end of March, the 15th Africa Scout Day. And as I gather it, I have to actually look through this. Yes, so there were actually a handful of things that kind of happened in Africa, sort of in mid and around the end of March. So I'm going to try and recap them as briefly as I can here because there's kind of a lot of different things, and they all lead up to a really cool commemoration of Baden-Powell's resting place. But beginning with the 15th Africa Scout Day, quoting scout.org. From 12th to 15th March, Antananarivo, Madagascar came alive as scouts from 20 African nations, alongside representatives from France, gathered to celebrate Africa Scout Day. Held every year on the 13th of March, this special day was established in 1995 by the Organization of African Unity, now the African Union, to honor scouting's transformative role in empowering youth and driving community development across the continent. The previous 2024 celebrations, hosted by Madagascar, marked the 15th edition of this regional event, following the previous year's festivities in Burundi. Oh, sorry, you know what? 2024 was probably a typo there. Festivities kicked off with an opening ceremony, attended by dignitaries including the Ambassador of Comoros to Madagascar, members of the Africa Scout Committee, and the Regional Director of World Scouting's Africa region. In his opening address, Africa Scout Committee Chairman Kiriganga reminded attendees that Africa Scout Day is not just a celebration, but a reminder of scouting's power to shape young leaders and build resilient communities. Today, we honor this legacy and recommit to preparing young people for life. End quote. And if you've been following Scouting 5 long enough, you'll know that oftentimes the news segments that I have about scouts getting involved in doing like some really, really amazing things in their communities often involve scouts from Africa because they routinely go out into these, very poor, underserved communities. Sometimes don't even have running water, and they do things like, build water wells and bring education. So really, really cool stuff happening amongst these scouts in Africa. And of course, Africa is where Baden-Powell is laid to rest, specifically in Kenya, I believe. I might have that wrong. Nope, I am not wrong. Good. And Paxtu, where the final residence of Lord and Lady Baden-Powell was, has actually just been designated as a guiding and scouting heritage site, quoting scout.org. The World Organization of the Scouting Movement and the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts, and the county government of Nairi officially designated Paxtu, the final residence of Lord and Lady Baden-Powell, and Nairi Town as a unique World Guiding and Scouting Heritage Site. This historic declaration was signed on the 24th of March during a special ceremony in Nairi, Kenya, attended by representatives of WASM and WAGs, underscoring the importance of preserving Paxtu as a lasting tribute to the founders and the values they instilled in the scouting and guiding movements. Located in Nairi, Kenya, at the foothills of Mount Kenya, Paxtu was the retirement home of Lord Baden-Powell, who spent much of his life in the country and the Africa region. Paxtu was built by Major Eric George Sherbrooke Walker and has since become a landmark for Scouts and Guides worldwide to visit. Nearby, the gravesite of Lord and Lady Baden-Powell in St. Peter's Cemetery has also become a place of reflection for visitors paying tribute to the founders of the scouting and guiding movements. For decades, the Kenya Scout Association and Kenya Girl Guides Association have led efforts to preserve and promote these sites, including maintaining the Baden-Powell Scout and Guide Information Center and organizing annual Founders Day and World Thinking Day celebrations, which regularly attract tens of thousands of young people and visitors. End quote. So there we go. I have no immediate plans to visit Africa, but if I ever do, I might have to make Nairi, Kenya, my first destination. And speaking of stories of Scouts rallying to help their communities, Scouts in Argentina were on hand to help out earlier this month when flooding struck a region in their country, quoting scout.org. When devastating floods swept through Bahia Blanca in Buenos Aires province, Argentina, on 7th March, leaving at least 16 people dead and thousands displaced, the Scouts of Argentina wasted no time launching a nationwide solidarity movement under the hashtag ScoutsXBahia. The unprecedented disaster saw nearly 290 millimeters of rainfall in a single day, a March record for the region, comparable to the historic floods of La Plata in 2013 and Santa Fe in 2003. The city's vulnerable position in the lower basin of the Naposta stream exacerbated the crisis, with both the stream and the Maldonado Canal overflowing and submerging large parts of the area. Young volunteers stepped up to make a difference. Local scout groups immediately emerged, organizing themselves to receive, sort, and distribute donations across the city. These young people set up community kitchens to provide hot meals to affected families and rolled up their sleeves to help clean homes damaged by floodwaters, embodying the Scout motto of being prepared and helping others in need. End quote. So I guess I was wrong. Well, the news story broke at the start of this month, but the actual flooding happened last month. Still, always awesome to see Scouts stepping up to help out in this way. And it's something that, I mentioned this before, but it's something that I don't always see. We don't really often see here in North America as much. Not that we necessarily have to deal with disasters on quite the same scale as in some of these communities, but when they do strike, it is not typically the case that we see Scout troops showing up within a very short time span to pitch in and help out. And I don't know if that's just a case of risk management or whatever the case, getting in the way of us doing service to our communities. And I should probably get off this hobby horse before I say something I regret. But it is always awesome to see Scouts around the world taking part, stepping up, and helping out when critical situations like this do arrive. On a different note, the Messengers of Peace initiative has recently pledged $50 million in renewed funding to increase the impact of scouting worldwide. Again, quoting scout.org. Scouts worldwide are excited with the renewal of a groundbreaking $50 million Messengers of Peace Fund that will support actions worldwide over the next decade. Funded by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, this partnership will enhance Scouting's core educational programs, strengthen the capacity of national Scout organizations, and inspire a global culture of peace through community service. The transformative Messengers of Peace agreement was signed at the Human Capability Initiative event in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on the 13th of April, and builds on more than 15 years of collaboration between World Scouting and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Messengers of Peace connects with the priorities of Saudi Vision 2030 and aligns with the Sustainable Development Goals through developing innovative youth leadership, peace education, sustainability, and active citizenship. Since 2010, support from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for Messengers of Peace has empowered a worldwide network of young peace builders to take action as global citizens to promote peace and sustainable development. Over the years, Scouts have carried out more than 16 million local projects and actions, contributing nearly 3 billion hours of community service towards the Sustainable Development Goals. End quote. And of course, mentioning Easter, I would be remiss if I didn't also note the passing of Pope Francis, who passed away early on Easter Monday, I gather. It was certainly later on Easter Monday when the news broke here, but time zones being what they are. Scouts around the world have evidently been paying tribute to the late pontiff, quoting, yet again, scout.org. Scouts around the world are paying tribute to Pope Francis, who passed away earlier this week at the age of 88, reflecting on his life and lasting legacy. A powerful advocate for young people, he frequently spoke of their potential and hopes for the future, striking parallels with Scouting's values through messages focused on themes of friendship, faith, and action. Born in the Argentine capital of Buenos Aires, Pope Francis made history as the first pontiff from Latin America. As a spiritual leader, he visited scout groups across the globe, inspiring many to make a difference and to build a more just and peaceful society. In an interview in 2015, he urged scouts to embrace stewardship, saying, "Remember, we are just custodians. We are here for a very short period of time on Earth. So, when you work with scouts, make sure we pass along a good Earth and a good world and all the good values that are important." In the days since his passing, scouting organizations in countries including Chile, Paraguay, Poland, Spain, Timor-Leste, and the United Kingdom have joined in honoring his memory. The International Catholic Conference of Scouting, an international body representing roughly 8 million scouts, paid tribute to Pope Francis for carrying the dreams of young people and those values which are dear to the Scouts. End quote. And just a reminder that it is important to do proper risk assessments before you undertake, and take everything that I just said about like risk assessments ahead of like disaster response in stride. But it is important when you're planning, say, a camp to consider the weather and to make sure that your scouts are well equipped for it. Because unfortunately, recently, some scouts had to receive medical treatment after some frigid temperatures hit at a camporee near West Point in the United States. Quoting the Albany Times-Union, "A large scouting camping event held at a West Point lake ended early Saturday with several attendees being treated for cold-related injuries after snow swamped their tents. Orange County Emergency Services posted on Facebook that it provided mutual aid to West Point for a Boy Scout camping event at Lake Frederick after a snowstorm. Orange County Emergency Services also provided a statement Sunday that they said came from West Point. West Point and Orange County officials provided emergency service Saturday morning to the annual Scout Camporee at Lake Frederick Recreation Area. Cold and snow affected the camping event organized by regional Scout organizations. As of noon, 18 campers had been transported to regional medical centers with potential minor cold weather injuries. West Point leaders are on site to continue assessing conditions and coordinate assistance, including warming facilities. We will provide updates as necessary." End quote. I have been at camps like that. It is always surprising to go to bed and wake up in a very different set of weather conditions than you went to sleep in. But especially nowadays, that is why we do try to encourage checking ahead, checking the weather, being cognizant of weather warnings, even potential weather, inclement weather, even if it's, only a possibility. It is important to, pay attention to these things and to be mindful of the fact that even at this time of year, spring, we like to think of it as warm and generally sunny, maybe occasionally rainy, but maybe it's just the Albertan in me talking, but I tend to think of April as being completely unpredictable. It is when winter can strike without warning, one last hearty gasp, which can include a lot of unexpected snow. And then again in fall, snow can come unexpected and quite early, and then be gone again like a few days later as things warm up again and the snow melts. But if you happen to be out camping at the time that occurs, it can definitely take you by surprise. And so it does help to try and always be cognizant of the fact that around this time of year, the weather can, and sometimes will, shift unexpectedly. So look ahead on the weather app if you can. Try and heed any weather warnings and maybe just pack extra anyways so that you can navigate a sudden cold snap should one occur. Now, it was St. George's Day recently in the UK, and as is often tradition there, Scouts and Guides took part in that. So I won't be quoting the news story directly, just taking note of the fact that, actually, I have that wrong. St. George's Day is coming up. It'll be the 27th of April, I think, is when it occurs. And that's typically when you will see Scouts and Guides taking part in St. George's Day parades around their communities. So look for them if they happen to be marching by, or if you happen to be at your St. George's Day parade, do take a look for your local Scout and Guide units taking part in the festivities there. It would seem, too, that Princess Kate has released a new video addressed to the Scouts that talks at length about her desire to find peace in the way that the Scout organization is, as has been discussed in some other news stories, an instrumental part of promoting peace in the world. Princess Catherine is the joint president of the Scout Association of the UK, and you can find her video online. It is actually really quite an excellent video. And I mean, it's Princess Kate. She's always delightful in everything that she puts out there for the causes that she supports, which happily includes scouting. And also just note a congratulations to the Chinley Scouts, who will be celebrating their centenary, quoting the Buxton Advertiser. The Chinley Scouts will be marking 100 years of scouting on Saturday, April 26th at the Chinley Scout Hut from 2 p.m. onward. There will be a bouncy obstacle course and a bouncy slide along with a barbecue and hot drinks. In the past decade, the demand for scouting has continued to grow, and the group has more than doubled in size during that time to give more children the chance to experience adventure, fun, and the friendship that scouting offers. Anyone who has been a scout with Chinley or has had children in the Scouts is invited along to the open day on April 26th. And if anyone can volunteer, there will be an email in the article in the show notes. You can get in touch with the Chinley Scouts to volunteer your time. End quote. And finally, just a couple notes from here in Canada. First, just a note for myself. I am planning to try and be a part of the Canadian contingent that goes to the 26th World Scout Jamboree in Poland. Whether or not I actually make it to Poland we'll see. But I'm definitely trying to coordinate that for my group and then also with some of the other groups around the Edmonton area, just to do fundraising things if we can do them together. Sometimes larger efforts are easier when there's more of us. And I know that my own group's participation in interest in WJ is fairly small. There's only a couple of youth and a couple of scouters that have expressed interest in going, but there are larger groups with other units around Edmonton that have come together. And so if we can kind of all partner up to fundraise and then also for like the travel side of things, that'll be really great. But in the meantime, one thing that we have been anxiously awaiting is the announcement of the contingent lead, the Canadian contingent lead for the 26th World Scout Jamboree. And happily, one has finally been announced. As of the end of March, Susie James is the head of the Canadian contingent that will be heading to the 26th World Scout Jamboree in Poland. There'll be a link in the show notes if you want to learn a little bit more about Susie. And for our final story, a fun little thing, again out of Scouts Canada, called the Gear Library, quoting scouts.ca. Scouts from across Canada and even visitors to the Greater Toronto Area can now borrow all the gear they need for an outdoor adventure, thanks to the new Adventure Gear Library in Toronto. No need to worry about traveling with bulky equipment or storage, just pick up what you need and get exploring. The Adventure Gear Library is a collection of camping and outdoor gear that Scout groups can borrow for their adventures. It was created through a partnership between Scouts Canada and Outward Bound Canada with support from the Greater Toronto Scout Foundation. Outward Bound Canada builds resilience, leadership, connection, and compassion in youth through transformative outdoor experiences. However, both Scouts and OBC recognize that many young people face challenges in accessing these adventures, especially those new to the outdoors, inexperienced, or from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. To help, OBC and Scouts Canada created the Adventure Gear Library, providing essential camping gear like sleeping bags, tents, and kitchen supplies without the cost or hassle of storage. This allows Scouts and their volunteers to focus their resources on the program experience and youth safety while adventuring outdoors. Outward Bound Canada maintains the gear library at their Don Valley Brickworks base in Toronto. Scouts can reserve equipment by contacting Outward Bound Canada directly. Before borrowing gear, troops are encouraged to join a weekend or evening program where instructors teach how to use and care for the equipment. These sessions can include camp cooking lessons, gamified tent setup, using tools like knives, saws, and axes, and how to ensure gear is maintained and returned correctly. End quote. Now, currently this is really only in the Toronto area, which is unfortunate because not everywhere in Canada is particularly close to Toronto. But it would be cool to see other adventure gear libraries like this crop up in other parts of the country. And I like the idea just in general of, building these partnerships to give scout groups and underprivileged scouts and inexperienced scouts access to gear that they might not otherwise have. I mean, it's one thing if you're me and my kids and there's a literal basement full of camping gear that I can just pull stuff out of so that if we all need to be kitted out for the weekend, we're fine. But not everybody is in that fortunate position. And so it is really cool to see a concept like this get launched. It would be even better to see it operate in places outside of the Toronto area, but a start is a start. And that is all the news I have for you this week. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, be prepared.